one is a real treat for me. I put my hand up for this one because I've been following RedBird and Cosmos very closely as an entrepreneur in sport who's interested to know where the money is and where it's flowing in sport. There's no better two people to talk to right now. So Gerry's on the end is a former partner at Goldman Sachs. He set up RedBird Capital, had amazing success with it. He was behind the deal for Yes TV, sold that to Rupert Murdoch for $4 billion, bought it back 20 years later for less. So we'll find out what Rupert Murdoch thought about that. He also invested in Legends, On Location, and recently has set up One Team, which I'm sure he will tell us all about. And we have Javier Alonso, who actually for 25 years ran Dorna Sports, which is the premier motorcycle event business in world sport, and is now running Cosmos, whose list of investors is as long as your arm and incredibly influential. President is Gerard Piqué, but some serious players on the board, and they're doing some really interesting things. So I'm going to start with Gerry first. What was Murdoch's reaction when you bought it back, Gerry?
Well, it's interesting. You know, I actually thought he would partner with us when we did buy it back, because he has a very long-standing relationship with the Steinbrenner family, who owns the New York Yankees. But as you know, there's been a handing over, a changing of the guard, if you will, at Fox, and I think they are somewhat narrowing their focus in the things that they're doing and looking to have more of a national footprint. Okay. So ultimately, you know, it's been a wonderful relationship with them. In fact, you know, I actually sit on the board of the Yankees as well, and the Murdochs were always on that board. So the relationships goes back, you know, 25 years. And when we sold it to Murdoch at the end of 2012, as you noted, you know, we sold it for close to $4 billion. It was a tremendous transaction. The Yankees stayed in for 20%. And I always, you know, when I set up RedBird, I always said, you know, the biggest mistake of my career was selling that. Right. I should have found a way to continue with it. It's a phenomenal. It really is. When you look at everything that's going on in sports, everyone's always looking for the next thing, and sometimes the next thing is sitting right there in your backyard. Yeah. And you know, to be an owner of the intellectual property of the New York Yankees and to find a way to evolve that in today's world, you know, where, you know, the forms of distribution and the way consumers are consuming this content, there's a tremendous opportunity there to reinvent yourself, and so that's what we're trying to do now. So in this past August, we actually bought it back in partnership with the Yankees, Sinclair Broadcasting, which is the largest television station group in America, and Amazon. And you know, the Amazon piece of it was very interesting because, you know, part of the themes is of this whole in the world today in terms of media consumption, particularly sports, is how it's going to get distributed, and the flip side of how it's going to get distributed is how is it consumed. Amazon is obviously one of the big companies that's probably going to be at the forefront of that. So we figured, you know, best thing to do is have them there at the table with us. What's
the broad business model of RedBird Capital? How do you invest? What's your strategy in your model?
Yeah, you know, look, I came from the big cap private equity world, doing it for 20 years at Goldman, you know, and I left that and retired from that because I wanted to do something different. I actually didn't really want to do private equity. What I really want to do is build companies. And you know, in the old days, those two things were overlapping. I would say in today's world, it's just a wash in capital. There's a lot of churning of capital, a lot of asset management, a lot of asset allocation, which is all fine. It's just not something that I want to do. What I love doing is finding entrepreneurs, founders of businesses that actually need a financial partner to help them scale their business to the next level. And so the sort of epicenter of RedBird is exactly that, whether it's sports or in the other areas that we invest in, communications, energy, financial services. It's always the same model, which is you find a founder. A lot of times it's a family business owner. The secret there's no secret sauce to the family component. It's just the mentality of family entrepreneurs and business owners is similar to ours. Whereas, you know, we always want to invest conservatively with an element of downside protection, but we don't want to give away any of the upside for that downside protection. And if you have something that's working, rather than sell it prematurely or artificially because you've got to go raise another fund, we would much rather hold on to it and keep building it.
Okay.
And that really is what we've been doing.
Turning to you, Javier. So is the model different for Cosmos, or is it similar? What's your time frame?
Well, basically when Gerard decided to start Cosmos was because he thought that his career was getting closer to, I mean, he has probably 2, 3, 4 more years of football. So he wanted to have something where to spend his time. He has been doing businesses since 10 years ago. When he was 22, he started to do video games and things like that, which is what he liked it. And he has evolved into a person that does a lot of connection. Of course, he understands about sports, and this is where he wanted to dedicate his time. I mean, I think we have a very similar vision. I mean, Gerard is not investing in something just for the sake of selling it after 5 years, because what he will do with the money. I mean, it's not a problem of having more money, it's a problem of generating value, and this is what he's trying. The case of Cosmos Tennis and Davis Cup, it is a special case for him. Of course, he's a great footballer, but he likes very much tennis. And he saw that the tennis and Davis Cup was dying. I mean, was slowly getting smaller and smaller. And he had that idea for years. And one day, one friend told him to do something on tennis, and he explained the idea, and here we are today. You know? But the model is, I think, quite similar.
25-year deal, is that right?
Yeah, we signed a 25-year deal with the International Tennis Federation.
How do you predict the future in 25 years?
I cannot predict the future. If I would be able to predict the future, probably I would be somewhere else.
Thanks for that.
No, but I think at the end of the day, the reason to get 25 years is because you need time to build things.
Yeah.
And the future will tell us if we were right or no with the things we are doing. Basically, we are trying to listen to the people that knows about tennis, because I mean, we have, of course, expertise in home, but really, the world of tennis is a very political world with a lot of stakeholders. You have the ATP, you have the ITF, you have the players, you have the Grand Slams. So we are trying to get all this together and being very humble to try to do something that is better of what it was done. So that's the reason of the 25 years.
Okay. Looking at the future, Gerry, over to you on this one. What sort of trends are you following at the moment, and what sectors are you looking at, or sports, or what parts of the business that really kind of juice you at the moment?
Well, look, the starting point for that is what I don't like. And, when I first give you a great example, I mean, as you pointed out, I've been very fortunate and have had success investing in sports over a 25-year period. When I started RedBird almost 6 years ago, I actually thought about not doing sports, because I think that what I've seen is some version of a supply-demand imbalance, if you will, where there's just a tremendous amount of capital now that thinks that they've discovered something that's always been there, and you've seen an escalation in asset valuations. But what led me to continue to stay in sports is that you've had this tremendous escalation in these asset valuations, and yet underlying it, the people and the infrastructure have not kept pace. And so what I do is I go in and I close that gap. And in the process of closing that gap, I create a company with real terminal value.
Could you give us an example of that?
Sure. So, I mean, you talked about so we won't go there, but that was the first one.
Yeah.
We capitalized, back in 2001, we handshook the Yes deal the day before 9/11. And we by the end of that week, we backstopped what then was probably the largest private equity check written, which was a $335 million equity check, and all we had to show for it was a piece of paper that said we own 40% of the intellectual property of the New York Yankees, and we had to be on the air broadcasting these games April 1st. And so that getting through that and seeing that model, really opened up my eyes to what the possibilities were for how to invest in sports. And I would say, based on that, and you look at the next things that I've done, it's the model that I've done across RedBird in all of our sectors. So the next one was Legends Hospitality. And there I put two families together, the Steinbrenner family that owned the New York Yankees and the Jones family that owned the Dallas Cowboys. And we created a company. When I sat down with Jerry Jones, we figured out that both the Cowboys and the Yankees were creating these state-of-the-art stadiums, both for debut in 2009. And I said to him, we should find a way to work together because we all think the same. And so we did the same model. We said, look, if we could, all Yes was capitalizing the intellectual property of the Yankees and finding a way to put a multiple on it. Why don't we capitalize the intellectual property of these stadiums, this infrastructure, and find a way to put a multiple on it? It was just a fancy way of saying, build a business. Back then, this was 2008, build a business that monetizes the fan coming in and out of that stadium. Today, we still don't do that right. I mean, you have a captive audience in these buildings for a multi-hour period, and there really isn't any sports team on the planet that follows that fan in and out of that stadium, let alone monetize that fan with a value proposition. I'm saying not just monetize it, but there's got to be a value proposition within the stadium. Legends was really the first step towards that, and that's $1 billion company today, and I sold that when I retired from Goldman back to the Yankees and the Cowboys. The next one was with the NFL. So at RedBird, I partnered with the NFL and, in my view, the 32 families that own the NFL, which are the 32 teams. And those are all family businesses. And we created what effectively is the entertainment arm of the NFL. It's called On Location Experiences. And it started with the Super Bowl. So when we did it, it was predominantly all Super Bowl. And they had great access to tickets from the NFL and the ability to throw hospitality inside the security perimeter of a Super Bowl, which is a pretty big thing. I mean, there's a tremendous number of sponsors and people who want to touch the NFL. Most of them are outside the security perimeter. You have to have that NFL Shield logo and a commercial licensing arrangement with the league to be inside. And so what we did is we set up a very long-term commercial licensing agreement with the NFL. And again, we bought basically the intellectual property of the Super Bowl. The way I think about it is we own 20% of the Super Bowl because we had, under this long-term deal, 20% of the inventory of a Super Bowl. And then we do what we do. Which, that gap I talked about, we went in and closed it. And so we vertically integrated all the production companies. We bought the largest travel business for colleges and universities in the United States. And fast forward to today, the NFL tripled our inventory. And we have a business that we just sold to Endeavor for close to $700 million. And we diversified it to 150 other rights holders. So while today only 30 to 40% of our business is the Super Bowl, we created the Super Bowl Music Festival. As people who have been to a Super Bowl know that it's really the professional sports industry convention in the United States. It's a week long. We control programming on Friday night, Saturday night. And we also diversified to 150 other rights holders like the NCAA, Grand Slam tennis, the PGA, Ryder Cup, Masters, and things like that. So same concept, but of course all very different things. In terms of trend, the last thing I'd say to you is the most recent thing that we're doing, you asked about trend, I'm probably more excited about this than I think I've been about anything that I've done. When you look at the value chain in sports, it's pretty simple. You've got players, teams, and leagues. And what's fascinating, if you actually step back, as opposed to just being a deal guy running around, you'll realize that 2/3 of that value chain has matured and evolved over the years with private capital supporting it, the teams and the leagues. 1/3 of the value chain has never touched capital, and that's the players. And so what we did recently is we took the NFL Players Association and Major League Baseball Players Association, and we took out their economic streams, anchored by video games and trading cards, and we put them into a new company. And we capitalized it well. We bought 40% of it, similar to my Steinbrenner example back in the Yes days. And the NFL and Major League Baseball Players Association own the other 60%. Day one, like all the companies that I've started, we're extremely cash flow positive. And from there, we now have a platform that has the players with us where we can show them how to build terminal value around their name, image, and likeness, and then use that as a platform to go into other areas, sponsorship, ticketing, content, media, et cetera.
It's a smart move. If you talk to anyone in sport, a lot of the power is shifting to the players and they're becoming brands, so kind of tapping into that intellectual property is a safe bet, I'm sure. Javier, over to you. I mean, what are you looking to invest in the future, and what's sort of exciting you?
I mean, besides Cosmos Tennis, we have other Cosmos. We have a production company where we produce content. We did 8 episodes with FC Barcelona last year, and we have a collaboration with the Players Tribune also. We have a eSports company where we run a league of football with Pro Evolution Soccer with Konami. We have 10 teams participating there with Bayern Munich, Manchester United, Arsenal, FC Barcelona. So it's a business that is starting and really is getting analogical football into electronic. It's not a proper eSports like League of Legends or other of those type of eSports, but it's something that is going to grow for sure. And also that gives us the ability to understand a little bit better the young generations, how they consume sport, because that is something that is changing, and it's changing a lot. And when you look at the world of tennis, for example, and how the consumption of tennis is done today with a very quite old audience, we have to learn how to engage the young generations. We do also have a football club. We bought a football club in 5th division in Spain. It's in Andorra.
Okay, I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Right, so it's a small football club. It's in a municipality between France.
It's a country.
It's sovereign.
It's a country.
Yeah,
Andorra.
and it's tiny between France and Spain in the Pyrenees.
Yes.
I mean, why?
Well, basically because it was a huge opportunity for us. Always Gerard thought that we had to invest on football, and that's the first investment we did. There are models like the one of Manchester City where you invest here. We are trying to invest underneath and try to bring that team to the top. So since we bought it, we were in 5th division. We are now in 3rd division. And we are 3rd, I think, today. So if everything continues like this, we will play the promotion for 2nd division in Spain, which is already professional football. And it's been a very successful 2 years for us in Andorra. Andorra, it's a little bit like Monaco. So tax-wise, it's much better. So that means
easier to attract players?
With Gerard, it's always easy to attract players. That's another very important thing. I mean, having somebody like Gerard and not only him as an investor, we have also Leo Messi and Cesc Fabregas,
right.
Because the three of them started in FC Barcelona when they were 13 years old.
You need to sign them for Andorra.
We tell them they want to come and play. I don't think Andorra is ready to host Gerard or Leo. But really the model is working, and we are right now looking at other opportunities across Europe of teams that have something special, but for whatever reason they are not in the place they should be.
Okay, so let's talk about soccer. Gerry, have you ever considered it? And if you have, what's the model for you? Buy a big club, buy a number of clubs, 2nd tier? How are you thinking about it?
Yeah, it's something that we've been spending the last 2 years on, actually. So we've really gone deep on this. Just out of the reason really I got to it was when you look at the progression of the things that we've done, the one thing we can't do in the United States is own a team. The rules in the States, which will change, but for now, they don't allow professional investors or institutional investors own teams, which is a shame when you look at the way we've done things. So our model has been to always be the partner to the team owner and help them build businesses, in partnership that way, without the benefit of owning the team. So in Europe, you can actually own the team, but it comes with all sorts of other challenges, obviously, not least of which is, and I've seen this, that, it's very difficult to invest well offshore where you don't have a real point of presence on the ground. So that's number one. Number two, one thing I take very seriously to heart is that in Europe, the fans really own the team, right? And you got to be very careful with that. And I think the fans look at owners as just passing through at whatever given time it is, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's their team, which makes it even harder for a foreign national to own a team in a jurisdiction. But having said that, the answer to your question is yes. We spent 2 years looking at it. We are continuing to look at it. We have looked at teams in London. We've looked at teams in Madrid, in France, and in the Netherlands. And I'm not looking at the big teams. I don't think you'll ever see me write a check to go buy Chelsea or one of those, or Tottenham or anything like that. It's not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just not, that's not what we're about. What we're about is more probably teams in the 6 to 11 category, where if I can create a sort of keiretsu of training academies in a multi-team, multi-country ownership, where we can actually, and we're partnered with a very capable and well-known data analytics team, and we can manage cash flow like a business, and with always the eye on making sure you're far away from relegation risk. But if you can set yourself up so that you have a very stable and consistent level of cash flow, I can then go do the things that I've done in the States in that environment, which I think will be great for the ecosystem. So there's so much to do.
Yeah.
But the starting point, we've been looking at it for 2 years and haven't been able yet to find the right grouping, because it requires the right partnership on the ground, and it requires all the other things that I talked about.
And would you be looking to buy them pretty much all at once or very quickly, or are you doing it?
Yeah, it's probably hard to buy them all at once, so it would be successive.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a group. I mean, I could start with one and just do it around one.
Yeah.
But I think there is something to, the grouping and the portfolio construction, if you will. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And I think it would be great. It would be great for the whole ecosystem if you were able to really develop the teams that are not in that top 5 or 6.
Yeah.
I think that would be great. But not only it's great. I think it's a great investment opportunity. It's also, I think, really interesting for the whole ecosystem.
In terms of risk, what's Cosmos's kind of risk profile? Do you like to do you like a really safe bet and a long-term play, or are you also prepared to kind of gamble a little bit? And obviously, with European soccer comes relegation. That's a risk. You put the John Henry put the ticket prices up at Liverpool and then had to take them back down again because there was so much pushback from the fans, let's say. So,
I mean, if you know Gerard, he likes gambling.
he likes, okay.
If you know him, I mean, when he likes playing cards, he likes gambling. I mean, not in business, but at the end of the day, you have to gamble in one way or another when you are investing. You can make a lot of analysis, but sometimes it will be wrong, okay?
Yeah.
So this is why we want to have like 6, 7 different platforms in 6 different sports or entertainment or media, so that we can compensate a little bit if something goes wrong.
Got you. Yeah. We haven't got a lot of time, actually, which is unfortunate. I know, Gerry, you've got to shoot to the airport pretty much 5 minutes' time, so we'll wrap it up. But kind of what's one piece of advice you would give an entrepreneur who is running a business now in how to grow their business? What would be the advice you would give them? Let's start with you, Gerry. It's hard to say because I'm not talking about a specific business here, but there's a lot of entrepreneurs I know in sport, and some of them are startups, some of them are kind of 2, 3, 4 years in. They find it very hard to make that jump.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a big question. I guess, just from my own experience, I would start with a premise that I've said to my own people and resonates around our investment committee table, which is you've got to make sure you have a legitimate reason to exist.
Yeah.
And sometimes that gets lost in the deal making.
Yeah.
And I have always found that when we look at something, first of all, the way we invest, we don't participate in auctions or competitive situations, only because what I'm looking for is a partnership. I'm looking for a partnership with a rights holder where there's a need for our capital, and reciprocally, I have a need for the downside protection and the longevity and consistency that partnership brings me. And around all of that, at the epicenter, is a legitimate reason to exist. What you're looking to create there has to be a need in the marketplace for it. Everything that we've done, going all the way back to the media business with the Yankees, all the way through now to the players, there has been a legitimate need at that time. The thing that's interesting is in today's world, in the United States, a lot of people think that they have to go offshore to find the next great opportunity. I'll tell you, the second thing I would say is all the opportunity is very much, at least in my part of the world, it's very much in the United States. Everything is getting re-underwritten. Media, as everyone knows, is being consumed differently. Everyone's trying to rethink it. I bought the Yes Network back. I created it almost 20 years ago, and I've been stayed involved with it for 20 years, which is, it's a very unique thing. But that helped me buy it back in a world where a lot of people were scared of that sector in the value chain because of the FANG stocks. And is everything going to zero? Well, no, it's not. I mean, we've been through enough cycles where we know, but it does require you to re-underwrite, so basically at the end of the day, it comes back to the essence of yes is the same thing. There is absolutely, without a doubt, people in the New York tri-state area are going to want to watch the New York Yankees. How they watch it is different, and how you re-underwrite it may be different. So that's the best advice I would give to an entrepreneur, to answer your question, which is start with having a legitimate reason. Don't get caught up in just doing deals.
Yeah.
That's probably the most important thing.
What about yourself?
Well, I think that looking at the history of Cosmos Tennis and what we did, so we first discussed it with ITF in December 2017. We get an approval on the board of directors February 2018. We went to the AGM in August 2018. We were 4 employees, and we managed to get the rights of Davis Cup for 25 years. So it's about a dream, and knowing, so having Gerard on board, it makes you dream faster and higher. So getting the right people around you helps you get the thing done.
Yeah.
But you have to have a dream and pursue it, because dreams are there to be pursued. So
Great advice. Has anyone got a question? We've got time for one question. So please, at the front, get a microphone as quickly as possible. Just gentleman here at the front. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I just have one question with regard, I think both of you guys, you are dealing with the regulator body. I think one of the challenge we are having here, some of the people have that vision and they will have very obstacles when it comes to the regulator or the regulation in top. So how much of percent you are dealing or meeting or making really a kind of a path or a window dealing with the regulator to make your life easy? Because setting a vision in 10 years, 5 years, and having that obstacle of regulator is my challenge. LMS, one of those, and when it's come to all those body in the tennis, I think, if they have their own vision when it's come to regulation, might stop you as an entrepreneur to pursue your career as well. So my question is, how much of the percent, guys, you spend when it's come to the investment side as well, you are sitting on those people to make your life, in a way, easy, or make sense, even the environment for the people to be attractive to kind of the tennis or to football or to the being an entrepreneur in the investment side? So that's the question I have for you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start.
Yeah.
Look, that's a great question. And I would say there's an element of that regulatory overhang or involvement, as you say, in everything that I've done. It's just, it takes different forms. We operate in sports, particularly. We operate in, and that is a regulated industry. Whether it's, it's the leagues themselves, the way the teams govern themselves. And what I would say is one of the most important things that we do is we try to educate and partner. We're very big on the partnering thing, because the problem is everything today is so transactional, and that when it's something like the things that we want to do and the things that you're talking about requires a different mentality. It has to be a partnership, and the starting point in the partnership is educating. So what I typically do, when we started On Location with the NFL, I mean, I spent months really working with the NFL to talk about what they wanted to accomplish. What were their rules that would limit me from doing the things that I thought I wanted to do? What did I have to work around? And ultimately, we ended up writing a business plan with the NFL for what ultimately became this company. And so I think that there's something very important in partnering with regulators as opposed to seeing them as in your way. Right? Because if you look at what's going on with gambling in the United States, and you look at how the path that DraftKings and FanDuel have gone down and what they experienced, from when they started to today, I would say if there's one thing that they could have probably and wish they would have done better in the beginning, it would be to have partnered with the regulators more overtly and said to them, hey, look, this is what we want to do. We understand this is new. We understand you've got, state laws and other things that you're going to be concerned about. How can we do this together? as opposed to looking at it more, transactionally, doing it and then going to the regulators or trying to get around them and things like that. So that's kind of how we've approached it.
Great advice.
Well, basically, I think regulators need to change. If you look back 30 years ago, all the sports were run by federations. If you look right now, federations, I mean, America is different, but in the rest of the world are or adapting themselves or losing their rights to their sport. So, and that was happened with us, with ITF. ITF understood that they needed to change and they needed to bring somebody commercially wise that could make it profitable, and this is what we are trying to do. ITF continues to be the regulator. ITF continues to be the owner of the building, but we rent the houses, okay? So in one way, there has to be a relationship, but the regulators need to understand that there is an evolution and need to understand how to get inside this evolution. That's very important.
Thank you for the question. Big thanks to our panelists, Gerry Cardinale, Javier Alonso, and thank you for sticking around. So big round of applause, please. Thank you.
Thank you.